Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa podcast. Our podcast is new, our podcast is bold, but political correctness is out the door. We will tell it like it is. Our guiding principle is truth, truth, and nothing but the truth. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa podcast. We have in our studio today Mr. Jamie Wilson III and Mr. Russell Cato, our co-host. Today we're going to discuss the topic relating to the indictment of the Uhurus recently by the FBI. I'm going to read an article that I wrote. And after reading the article, my co-host and I will engage in a very healthy, lively discussion about the article. The title, St. Petersburg-based Uhurus indicted as Russian agents. The article. The Tampa Bay Times published an article written by Mr. Dan Sullivan on Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. And the article was titled, St. Pete Uhuru members indicted. Mr. Sullivan's very first paragraph reads as follows, quote, a federal indictment unsealed Tuesday accuses members of the Uhuru movement of working on behalf of the Russian government in a campaign to sow discord, spread pro-Russian propaganda, and influence local elections. End of quote. The writer went on to identify Omali Yeshitela, the leader of the Uhurus, and three others as defendants in the indictment. The guilt or innocence of the indicted Uhurus is a matter for a later date. However, we owe it to ourselves to discuss the seemingly gross hypocrisy surrounding these indictments and the lack of indictments for so many others who have been involved in campaigns to sow discord, spread pro-Russian propaganda, and influence elections. The difference here is their deeds were out in the open, in the national print media, and on national TV broadcasts. As to whether they're being compensated by the Russian government is not something that we can attest to at this time. 5 upstanding and prominent members of our St. Petersburg community were asked to offer comments regarding the Uhurus indictment, and 2 obliged us with statements. Their statements in full are as follows. Dr. Goliath Davis, former chief of police and former deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, said, quote, I'm surprised by the indictment. Chairman O'Malley has always worked and advocated for the community, and I'm puzzled by the allegation he conspired with a Russian to overthrow an election. We all know that Trump and his crew conspires with the head Russian, Putin, yet there are no indictments. I wonder if the charges will withstand the light of day. End of quote. Ayman Askil Muhammad Akil, chairman of the Collective Empowerment Group and longtime community leader, said, quote, I was disturbed, intrigued but not particularly surprised when I learned that federal prosecutors had persuaded a grand jury to indict Omali Yeshitela, along with several of his movement supporters and allies, based upon information allegedly collected by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. In fact, I expected this would be the next step on the heels of the recent dramatic high-profile raids on their homes and headquarters. Given the current inflamed political climate, no one should have been surprised, in my opinion. End of quote. Ayman Askil continued by saying, quote, like Chairman Omali, as he is popularly known, who is eagerly preparing for his day in open court, I also await the trial. I want to hear the charges along with the evidence government officials present before the judge and 12 impartial citizens. Until then, what we have is sensational accusations published via various media outlets. I know from experience that the truth will come out no matter how long it takes. End of quote. Again, it's a well-known fact that we have a large number of individuals who have attempted to sow discord, spread pro-Russian propaganda, and influence elections. Their names are known to the FBI, CIA, DOJ, and everybody else. Yet, no indictments. Sadly, there's so much hypocrisy in our democracy. Thank you. Okay, my co-host, Jamie, what you have?
In listening to all of this, if Russia really want to make a point, they wouldn't use this organization. It's such a small organization. It really is to make a point. What it's almost like if that all this is all alleged, and I think it's a bunch of fluff, a bunch of nonsense,
Bullshit.
bullshit. So you gonna pick one of the smallest groups to push your point out. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. The Russians are smarter. Putin's smarter than that. And secondly, I think what really had the FBI to try to fuse everything together, because they probably listened in, because they're always snooping, and probably heard because this Ukraine war, it was said that Einhoff, who's falsely stated that anyone who supports Ukraine war, who supports Ukraine also supports Nazism and white supremacy. So they're using it because it is a Black organization, a Black group. They're using that to try to tie it in as if they're supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? So it's I don't think it's going to hold much weight personally. I mean, I don't know what they have,
Right.
but from what they've given to the public, I don't think it's going to hold much water unless they got a bombshell hidden or something.
And that was the point I made when I said their guilt or innocence
Correct.
is for another day, because
Right.
we don't know all
We
the
don't
facts.
know all the facts.
We don't know all the facts. Russ, what you have?
You're right. We don't know all the facts, but we do know this fact, that there was 4 members of this party indicted. That's the fact.
That's a
Yes.
You can't get away from it.
Right.
I heard Jamie said a few minutes ago of the organization being small.
Right.
When I read this, because in teaching American history, you see, I remember Joe Waller, that was his name at one time.
Joe Waller.
Joe Waller. And I was teaching at 16th Street in 1966.
Right.
And I remember Joe had the nerves, and I admired him when he pulled that picture off the wall. Can you remember that?
The mural,
that mural.
right?
And I remember when I used to go downtown looking at that mural. That was a disgusting damn mural.
Very
Very
disgusting.
disgusting. And he had the motivation to pull it down. And that time, I really began to admire Joe Wall. I really did.
Mhm.
But here, let me go back to this. J. Edgar Hoover. I got to bring him up.
Mhm.
If you look at the FBI, I only think, I'm not too sure, that there's only been 2 directors of the FBI. Could be more. J. Edgar Hoover and a guy named Christian something today. But go back and look at J. Edgar Hoover. Go back and look at him in 1960. There are 2 things that he made sure that will not come to America: communism and black nationalism.
Mhm.
You understand that? He said this: communism is an evil thing in America. Black nationalism is also an evil thing. But if you put 2 of them together, you got 2 ultimate evils. You understand that?
Right.
Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Black Panther, all these boys are under surveillance by
Mhm.
J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
He never stopped.
And still are.
Still, yeah, never stopped.
Mhm.
See, that philosophy, that action still carry on today with the FBI. So it was not amazing to me for Joe being a black nationalist that they were going to hit him be big or small,
Mhm.
because that's not in, quote, the American society, communism and black nationalism. I want to destroy both. And here's, by the way, if you notice the civil rights movement, J. Edgar Hoover always believed that these things was communist infested. Every civil rights movement, he believed. Same he told with the Black Panthers.
Mm.
I believe that once you begin organized black nationalism, communism is involved. Let's go back to,
Per the way he thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
yeah.
yeah.
So let's go back with that idea. Let's go back
Hmm.
to Omar.
Mhm.
What they accuse him of?
Yeah.
Working with the Russian government. That's what they accuse him of.
Mm.
And Joe said, no, that's wrong. The only thing I'm trying to teach black people that you're colonized people in America.
Mhm.
That's my talk.
Right.
That's my talk. And if any organization would help me to do this, I'm welcome, even if it was the Russian.
That's right.
Russ, I love all your points. Well taken. But I think the FBI made a mistake in charging them as they charged them in terms of sowing discord
Mhm.
and promoting pro-Russian propaganda
Mhm.
and attempting to influence local elections.
Mhm.
Those should not have been the charges. Those are bogus in the sense that what so many others, as I indicated in the article I read, so many others are doing exactly the same things that they said O'Malley and his group members were doing. So many, but they're doing it in the national media. They're doing it in publications, broadcast TV. They're doing it consistently, loudly, but no indictments.
It's a black.
That's the
organization.
problem.
It's a black organization,
Yeah.
and they just want to pounce. They just want to pounce because they can. Because if Russia really wanted to get in bed with an organization to push their political ideology, they wouldn't choose this. They would choose something much more bigger, much more powerful, if they really wanted to get a point across.
Well, they do.
This-
And I'm gonna
right.
tell you, they have techniques
Mhm.
for spreading their propaganda. And they have techniques that have been well developed.
Mhm.
They use our media,
Mhm.
such as
Mhm.
everybody
Yeah.
knows,
Everybody knows.
everybody
Starts
knows.
with F.
And they have these hosts, these asshole hosts
Mhm.
spreading their propaganda.
Yeah, and they get away with it.
I think you got to understand this. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he sitting down, just drinking beer, and we talk. He said, Cato, there are two things in America you better understand. He said, you better understand capitalism and democracy.
Yes.
He said, democracy is where you can argue fairness and all that bullshit. He said, but capitalism, you can't argue that shit
No.
because it's based on money.
Based on money.
Based on money. So if you want to talk about this, you can talk about the democracy side of it. Oh, we got this here.
Right.
But I'm hoping, and I'm saying this, that he has a good lawyer. Because what they're going to make him do, they're going to make him pay, money-wise. And they're going to make him pay. For instance, look at Briggs and what Jim Jordan and McCarthy say about Briggs bringing this shit up. That's just bullshit. But see, they can afford that shit because they got Trump. People giving money to Trump. But you can't, when you go against the FBI, in fact, Joe Walling himself said, I expect to be indicted. Look at it, listen, he expects to be indicted.
Yeah.
See, so when he told me that, and I went real back and said, Joe, I hope you have a good lawyer. Because there's going to be some money in this shit here. Yeah.
You know, there are some facts, again, as we've already said, that we don't know. We don't know what the FBI has, and we don't know what Joe or O'Malley and his group members may have done. We don't know. But in my mind, that's not the major point of this discussion. In my mind, the discussion centers around the fact that what the FBI charged him with, so many others are doing it. For example, I Googled the simple question, does Tucker Carson spread pro-Russian propaganda? That's the question, simple. A lot came up, but I just grabbed this one article, and the article has a headline: who is Tucker Carson really rooting for in Ukraine? Who is he really rooting for? And I want to share with our audience a little information here. The article was written by Chris McGreal, and it's dated Sunday, October 2nd, 2022. And here's a little from the article. If Americans think things are bad, there's always Tucker Carson to make them seem even worse. Never more so than when the Fox News host is talking about Russia's war in Ukraine. Quote, we've entered a new phase, one in which the United States is directly at war with the largest nuclear power in the world. End of quote. Carson used that statement to warn his viewers. This alarming development, which apparently escaped the rest of the United States media, was supposedly brought about by the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline from Russia to Western Europe. Sweden and Denmark say the pipelines were blown up with several hundred kilos of explosives, pouring vast amounts of natural gas into the sea and atmosphere. While European politicians hinted that Russia was responsible as part of a new phase of hybrid war over Ukraine, Carson said the evidence pointed in a new direction or another direction. Quote, if you're Vladimir Putin, you would have to be suicidal, a moron, to blow up your own energy pipeline, said Carson. So if not Putin, who? So where Carson went with the rest of his statement was he was blaming that on Biden, the blowing up the pipeline on Biden. So if that's not intended to be a pro-Russian statement, propaganda, sowing discord, to influence an election, what is?
Check this out from CNN. This is before President Biden was elected when he was vice president. Talk about propaganda. President Donald Trump on Sunday night, this is per CNN, World News. President Donald Trump on Sunday night retweeted Russian propaganda about former Vice President Joe Biden that the U.S. intelligence community recently announced was part of Moscow's ongoing effort to denigrate the Democrats ahead of the November election. It also was, they also had audio tapes with him talking with lawmakers from the Ukraine, but this was just to throw it. It's really disinformation. But that's an example of what's going on. This is on CNN, live news. This man is tweeting this stuff himself, and nothing happens to him.
Well, we can go back to when he stood on stage next to Putin, Helsinki, Finland. You remember when he was asked if he believed that Russia interfered in our election. And he deflected by saying that he asked that question of Putin, and Putin strongly denied it. And he believed Putin, whereas he dismissed the American intelligence officers, the American intelligence reports.
Yeah.
So basically, he was saying to hell with the American intelligence reports. Putin said he didn't do it. I believe him. That's man.
It's a well-known fact that Russia has a disinformation campaign against Biden or against the U.S. It's right here in writing, and this is all from CNN. I mean, it's to mislead information about Biden. This was, when he was running. So this is in your face, and they want to mess with this gentleman,
O'Malley.
about
That's what I want to get
this
back to.
nonsense.
Yeah.
About this nonsense.
Yeah. And
Much larger scale of damage.
And what we're doing is just pointing out examples
Right.
of others doing
The same thing.
things
Exactly.
that they're charging O'Malley and his group members
Right.
with.
But here's what you must understand. I hear both you and Cheney.
Mhm.
There's a black world and a white.
This
Oh,
is true.
yes.
This is true.
Look at it.
Always.
It's a black world and a white world.
Always.
Joe, with the Uhurus movement, that's a black radical movement for as the white world is concerned. They don't like this whatsoever. And to the point, I want to say this. In 1966, J. Edgar Hoover said, the most dangerous society in America, and this is 1966, is the Black Panthers Party.
Mm.
That's what he said. Now, what he does now, and he's dead, that same idea go with now Joe Walker. He's a black,
That's what he's thinking.
that's what he's thinking.
That's what he's
And he
thinking.
says this, they want to hit him with the Russian thing because they want to build up the idea that communism in America is bad. And my God, it is much worse when you mess with black people.
And this also goes back to what you're saying. It's all about the money,
Yeah.
because if they could have these charges and bring up a bunch of legal fees, then they figure they can wipe him out and silence him.
They did it with Martin Luther King.
And that's probably another angle.
Yeah.
Hit him with legal fees,
That's right.
even though they probably know it's bullshit that
Yeah.
what they're saying. He's have to defend himself
That's right.
from it legally and spending money, and that's what they're trying to do.
They lose
So all
nothing.
you supporters out there that support him, dig in your pockets, because
That's
he's
right.
gonna need it,
You don't need it.
and rightfully so. He's gonna need it.
It's going to need it.
Yeah, because these are, we like I say, we don't know all the information. We don't know, but these charges are they're not realistic. So maybe they just, I don't know what they have. We don't know that. I
And
wish
it's,
I knew.
and it's the same thing that Jim Jordan is saying by Biggs.
Mhm.
These charges that Biggs is about to bring up is bullshit.
Yes. Yes.
But it's a black thing.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
You got to understand this.
It's a black thing because Trump himself has already identified the district attorney in New York as a racist. Actually, all the black prosecutors
Yeah.
are racist
Yeah.
because they're bringing charges against him possibly.
Yeah. Mhm.
Look at your Supreme Court.
They need to go put him to bed already.
Which one?
Trump. Put
Well, I
him in a
thought you were talking
submarine.
about Clarence
Yeah.
I know.
Thomas.
No.
Well, he just yeah, you
Put him in Trump.
look at all the information they got on him.
Oh, my
Put him in a
God.
submarine.
Yeah.
That's his prison.
I know we're getting off the subject
No.
slightly, but our first podcast,
Yeah.
Mhm.
very first podcast over a year ago was about Clarence Thomas. And the title of the podcast was Clarence Thomas. What an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Somebody told me you all need to do that podcast again,
Mhm.
the same one, because he's still an embarrassment.
But you know what, Ray? If people don't realize, the most serious thing has taken place in the United States is January 6th.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is the most serious.
Right.
That is the most
Right.
serious.
And all this other stuff,
Oh,
misdirection.
yeah.
They're
That's
trying
what
to,
it is.
you know, get you to look over here at this and look over here at that. No, this is the treason, the most treasonous thing that's
No.
happened in my lifetime.
Anybody.
And they're still walking around.
And still-
And there are people in Congress, such as Jim Jordan,
Mhm.
that I feel
he had a part.
gave aid and comfort to the
Yeah.
insurrection.
Yes, he did.
Mhm.
Yes, he did.
Aid and comfort to the
Right.
insurrectionists. And if Merrick Garland had done his job, we wouldn't have Jim Jordan heading that committee
Yeah,
acting
exactly.
stupid right now. Acting stupid. But I was just reading a pamphlet put out by O'Malley and his group identifying how the FBI raided his home.
Oh,
According to what he stated, they arrived at 5 a.m. in armored vehicles. The FBI threatened O'Malley and the deputy chair of the organization, Anna Zinni. They threw flashbang grenades. They deployed drones, smashed through windows, and stole computers, phones, files, and other property. In essence, they were treated like real criminals, serious criminals. They didn't do that for all these other people we've mentioned, but they need to. They need to, because we have such hypocrisy in our democracy.
They're really, we're just not treated fair. We're not treated fair. Yeah, unless we just stand up and continue to fight and push back and, because any little thing that's done, you could put a lie on someone. I mean, you easily, you can do that. Not saying that this is a lie, like we don't know the details,
Right.
but you can say something that's not true, and that person, whether you be a regular person or a politician or whatever, they got to defend themselves. They got to defend, especially when the law is involved.
Okay, I want to bring up this one last article that I pulled about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene parrots Russian talking point on Ukraine. And again, we're talking about promoting pro-Russian propaganda, sowing discord, and trying to influence elections. Here's the statement here, a couple of sentences. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene parroted a Russian talking point with her claim that Ukraine is a country whose, quote, government only exists because the Obama State Department helped to overthrow the previous regime, end of quote. Experts in foreign policy related to Russia and Ukraine called Greene's claim ludicrous and preposterous and embarrassing. Moreover, they said Greene appears to have bought in to the Russian propaganda. Well, guys, guess what?
Not surprised.
Time is upon us to call it quits on this discussion. And in doing so, I want to thank my two co-hosts for this lively discussion on the indictment of the Uhurus And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Ray Tampa podcast. And ask that you do so each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. on 99.1 FM, The Bird. Also, we ask that you log on to YouTube, type in the Ray Tampa podcast, and take a look at all of our podcasts right there on YouTube. And also visit the Weekly Challenger and read some of the articles we have posted in the Weekly Challenger newspaper. And finally, sponsorships are welcome. Sponsorships are welcome. All right, you listen to the hottest podcast in all of Florida, the Ray Tampa podcast. Good evening.